Welcome to Sparklines, a special podcast series from Rosov Consulting. I'm your host, Frayda Gonshor Cohen. In each episode, we're sharing big ideas, thoughts, and learnings from our areas of expertise. We'll include reflections from our team and interviews with some of our client partners. Today, we're exploring Jewish engagement, what it is, why it matters, and how we measure it, focusing on those often described as unengaged, underengaged, or unaffiliated. Many Jewish programs and organizations aim to reach people who have little or no connection to Jewish life. Yet defining and understanding this group remains a challenge. In this episode, we'll hear from Annie Jollymore, Senior Project Lead at Rosov Consulting, and Josh Miller, Chief Program Officer at Jim Joseph Foundation. Towards the end of the episode, we'll share 3 sparks or tidbits of knowledge that we hope you take away from this episode. So what do we mean when we say engagement? Is it different from words like affiliation, identity, or empowerment? We can talk about engagement as a behavior, but it can also be a demographic feature of a population. One of our recent studies, Jewish Families Today, provides a window into defining and measuring Jewish engagement. Crown Family Philanthropies, the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, and the Jim Joseph Foundation commissioned the study to provide insights into the needs and aspirations of contemporary Jewish families and the roles Jewish institutions currently and could play in supporting their Jewish lives.
As we've worked on the Jewish Families Today project, and I've had to engage with the concept of engagement in really rigorous ways, it's unfolded for me and its definitions and the ways that it's used. Engagement is one of those terms that is used so broadly and so expansively that it almost doesn't mean anything anymore. We have to define it specifically to the context that we're working in. When Jewish professionals talk about engagement, they are thinking about part of their professional calling and what it is that they're there to do. I realize that when I talk about engagement, I'm usually thinking about it from the perspective of participants engaging with an institution or with Jewish values or engaging in Jewish community or life in some kind of way. As a researcher, I often am thinking about engagement as an attribute of a person, and we're often trying to measure how engaged are people in the Jewish world overall. What we want to know is whether they have found and are using some kind of pathway to Jewish meaning and expression.
Sometimes the definition of engagement in our work is very program specific, where it's defined by the outcomes that the funders or the program designers are thinking about for their participants. Whether that's engaging with Israel, engaging in Jewish institutions in a local community, such as a JCC or synagogue, or joining a community or group of friends who gather for Shabbat meals or celebrate holidays together.
There are sort of unmediated ways for people to engage with Jewish meaning, with Jewish life, with Jewish texts and materials, with Jewish culture. But as applied researchers, we are working with clients who are interested in what is happening around their specific programming. So I do think there's a thing where engagement, the concept of engagement comes from a specific programming perspective where the questions are about who is not engaging in this kind of programming and why, who is engaging in this kind of programming and why, and what are they getting out of it? And are the people who are not engaging in it people who would benefit from it, who would enjoy it, right? We talk about engagement with synagogues because there's a lot of concern about declining membership and attendance in synagogues. So there's all these very sort of specific and concrete ways, but we're also always after something else, something a little bit bigger, a little bit greater, and a little bit broader and more abstract.
One of the funders of the Jewish Families Today study, the Jim Joseph Foundation, is focused on engaging, educating, and inspiring young Jewish minds. Josh Miller, Chief Program Officer, has been thinking about Jewish engagement for over 10 years in his role at the foundation.
When we use the language of engagement in the Jim Joseph Foundation, we're usually talking about engaging in Jewish learning, because that's a core of what we invest in and what we fund. But that can take many different forms. Young people find connection, meaning, and purpose through Jewish learning experiences that they may have. In the world of language around education and engagement, Some people talk about engagement as a contrast to education. Perhaps they think of classroom-based learning or traditional formal education and contrast that with engagement that might be a lighter version, more episodic or just a social event. The other thing I just wanted to caution around language is that this language of engaged, unengaged, affiliated, unaffiliated has always, we've found, to be problematic in that people don't usually see themselves as a engaged or unengaged or affiliated or unaffiliated Jew. It's important that we just recognize different people are making different choices about how they want to experience their Judaism and what resonates for them. Our challenge is those who want to invest in Jewish learning is to meet people where they're at and not try to box them into a certain category of who's in and who's out.
Labels like engaged or unengaged don't always reflect how people actually experience their Jewish lives. What does it mean to broaden our understanding of engagement beyond a simple scale of more or less involved? As families become more geographically dispersed and less tied to traditional institutions, Jewish life is unfolding in new, creative ways. That shift challenges us to think differently about how engagement shows up in homes, online spaces, and informal networks, and what counts as meaningful connection.
We talk about engagement in quantities, right? We're looking for more, less engaged. They're not super well defined quantities, but they're definitely sort of quantitative references to how much engagement somebody embodies. And we can't always count this. Some examples that come to mind come directly from on-the-ground qualitative research that I've participated in with folks. So what about a group of Israeli-American families that spend time together, celebrate holidays in ritualistic ways, but have never set foot in a synagogue in the United States? Or a family with a synagogue membership that continued rolling over after their child's b'nai mitzvah, but only go to services on 1 or 2 high holidays a year, don't observe Shabbat, don't participate in anything else. Or queer young Jews who have a WhatsApp group with a Havruta that do text study every week, spend their free time on Sefaria, but have never been to a JCC, wouldn't attend any of the denominational synagogues that we often think of and work with. People may be better differentiated by the kind of Jewish engagement they are seeking or engaging in, rather than the amount of engagement they have.
It's a little less on who's engaged and who's not engaged. It's more about the learner themselves, not just who shows up for learning, but also what is the learning they're having. And I'll say that we define that really broadly. That can look like the learning you have in a classroom-based setting. It could also be something that happens at summer camp or an immersive Israel travel experience, or at home with a family, or in relationship with your camp counselor who you met years ago. Or there's so many different ways that people learn. And part of what we're exploring is what kinds of learning experiences are powerful and why, and how we invest in people having more of those.
Engagement can be understood not just in numbers, but in the quality and diversity of learning experiences that people seek. This challenge of measuring and quantifying engagement echoes some of the challenges in measuring contemporary Jewish identity that have been well articulated by scholars of Jewish education. You can find links in the show notes to some of these publications.
Just because of American culture and because of the decline in institutional affiliation, the real serious contemporary need for engagement with meaning, like the different sorts of opportunities for engaging in the Jewish narrative, as Beth Cousins put it, I think are actually growing and diversifying. The landscape is changing. It feels to me like we're sort of mid-change, and that our understandings of models of and methods of measuring engagement are going to have to change with that changing landscape.
Jewish engagement is often sparked and deepened through personal connections, with relationships like those with friends, parents, or roommates playing a crucial role in fostering interest.
We know that the experience of the individual is wrapped up in the relationships they have with the people they are closest to. So much about the decisions about how we choose to spend our time are influenced by the people that we love. The family unit is of particular interest because members of a household will influence other members of a household. Families that enroll in preschool and then get pulled in and make friends, and that becomes the community they're a part of. We know what happens when a Jewish and a non-Jewish person fall in love, and the opportunity for that family to create a Judaism reflective of who they are, if we can embrace and support them in the right ways. We hear all over our portfolio about greater family engagement. We have some wonderful models already, whether it's PJ Library or family schools, family visitation days at camp, and there are family trips to Israel. There's opportunity for organizations doing that to do more. And there are many places where the organization is by design working with teens or working with young adults or college students and paying close attention to the individual without thinking about the context of their family unit. By raising our awareness about the opportunity to engage parents or siblings or grandparents, we open up a whole new realm of opportunity and learning that is largely untapped. I think there was a time when we took for granted that families knew how to teach each other about Judaism. In a world where that's not the case, we could teach grandparents, parents, and even kids and siblings how they can play a role in the Jewish experience of their loved ones. And that is wide open for opportunity that is being experimented with, but I don't see it happening at scale.
As Annie noted earlier, shifts in American culture and a decline in institutional affiliation haven't diminished people's desire for meaning. They've only reshaped where and how people seek it. Jewish life today is unfolding across a wide and diverse landscape, from virtual gatherings to home rituals, from personal study to peer-led learning. These evolving expressions of connection call on us to expand our definitions of engagement beyond formal membership to include the many ways people are building rich, resonant Jewish lives through personal relationships and shared experience.
I think it is true that it's easier to measure the individual. And so we end up fixating on the experience of the individual when we should be thinking more about family units. We live in a world of individual choice. And that is a reality of radical customization. I would argue that Judaism has a countercultural offering to that, which is and always has been about thinking about not just yourself, but thinking about your family and your community and how you can make a difference within the context of that. I think that the idea of engaging in Jewish learning because it enriches our lives and leads to connection, meaning, and purpose is actually a very old Jewish idea. Long before we were talking about Jewish communal institutions, we were talking about a wisdom tradition that existed in order to teach us how to live our lives.
Despite the focus on families, inclusivity is another vital dimension to consider. Not everyone fits the traditional nuclear family mold. Many are grandparents, singles, or part of a non-traditional family structure. Their diverse experiences contribute to a rich tapestry of Jewish life, offering fresh perspectives on how connection and belonging can be cultivated in meaningful ways.
In the Weinberg study, which is a study that we're working on around economic vulnerability in the Jewish community, our colleague Alana Horowitz, who conducted almost 200 interviews with individual people, many of them have experienced economic vulnerability. And one of her findings is that there are very few opportunities to engage meaningfully and feel a sense of belonging in Jewish community when you are not part of a traditional nuclear family. People who never have children, who never marry, or who have other kinds of untraditional family structures often have a very difficult time finding ways and places to engage in Jewish programming. This focus on life course and having a family is a real barrier to engagement for a lot of the people who actually might have some of the most time to engage Jewishly. People who don't have kids, people who are not married and don't have some of the other kinds of family obligations but want to participate in community are not finding ways. And I think there are ways to integrate them a lot more.
These stories remind us that Jewish engagement often begins in the relationships people hold most dear, within families, across generations, and among chosen communities. But not everyone fits into the same mold. As definition of family evolves, so too must our understanding of connection, belonging, and Jewish life. We are witnessing a natural shift as traditional membership patterns give way to a more varied and dispersed expression of Jewish life. New forms of connection are emerging in unexpected places, painting a picture of a community that is evolving and expanding its reach. Drawing on work that Rosov Consulting did with UJA Federation of Greater Toronto to explore the meaning of and pathways to Jewish empowerment, Annie explores some new pathways to engagement we've seen in our work.
Really, what empowerment is, it is about giving individual people the tools to imagine, craft, and pursue their own Jewish journeys, and to help become facilitators for other people who wish to do the same. It's really a grassroots sort of approach at building Jewish life, literacy, connections, and community. There's a lot of opportunity for people to be building their own Jewish lives and their own Jewish paths. What we saw in Jewish families today is that people are doing that even in situations where they don't necessarily feel empowered to do it. The changing landscape requires a redefinition of how we're understanding engagement and how we're going to achieve it. And I think that the grassroots sort of empowerment-based model is an interesting way to think about how we might be working with engagement into the future.
As Jews move further away from Jewish population centers, engagement patterns have evolved. Many parents, despite strong Jewish upbringings, are now distant from the institutional networks that once shaped their Jewish lives. They're seeking accessible, meaningful support to build something of their own.
There's a quote that really comes into my mind by a woman who was raised in the conservative movement, went to Schechter schools as a child, and said, "I assumed that based on my rich Jewish background, that I would know enough to create Jewish life for my kids. I am finding that I need help. I need other resources." There are a lot of people doing things on their own now, and people are making a lot of use from online resources. There's YouTube channels with Jewish programming for kids that people who live far away from institutions are drawing on to create Jewish life. But even despite all these resources, a lot of them want someone to help them curate it, make sense of it, and figure out how to build the Jewish life. So I think there's a lot of room for institutions to figure out ways to engage with these parents.
People are asking themselves, who am I? Where do I come from? What are the values and traditions that I've inherited? For Jewish people, it is often the case that they find the Jewish stories and the Jewish wisdom and the Jewish practices to be resonant for them because it's so part of who they are and where they come from. For Jews by choice, it somehow comes to them through who they are becoming as a person. Maybe they find out they have connection to their Judaism way back in the past, and maybe it's simply something that is who they've evolved into being. I think that Judaism has something to say that is resonant for people. Is it better than or worse than other wisdom traditions and other sources of inspiration? Not necessarily, but it is for some people.
Even with barriers like time, money, and distance still in play, the search for meaning Josh describes is manifesting in burgeoning innovation. Grassroots approaches are taking hold, especially among those who've long felt disconnected, reshaping what Jewish community can look like.
I think a favorite thread that I'll pull on that we see all across our portfolio is the move by Jewish organizations working with young people to empower young people to create the Jewish communities they want to be a part of. And we see this whether it's with Hillel's empowering student leaders, BBYO and youth movements empowering their teens, or Moishe House empowering their community builders and residents. That model enables a young person to draw on what they've learned from their family, from whatever Jewish learning they've been able to engage in, mash it up with what they find important and resonant, and then begin creating experiences that they want to be a part of and to pull their friends into it. We see so much creativity bubbling out of these peer-to-peer engagement opportunities that are both powerful for the individuals and those who participate, and also helping evolve our tradition into becoming a newly relevant way to find access to connection and meaning in people's lives.
While institutional engagement may be shifting, the drive for meaning, connection, and purpose remains strong. By supporting empowered, relational, and locally rooted approaches, we're beginning to see a vibrant, redefined Jewish landscape taking shape, one that reflects the values and lives of the people building it. We end every episode of Sparklines with 3 sparks of insight that can enhance your learning. Our first spark is that understanding engagement requires us to think with more complexity. Measuring engagement depends a lot on the context in which we are talking about it and the perspectives of the people who are experiencing it and those who are trying to measure it, whether those are participants, researchers, program providers, or funders. Additionally, engagement needs to be considered beyond the context of the individual. It's a highly relational idea, and thinking about the unit of analysis for engagement means thinking about the relationships that individuals hold with one another, whether those lie in family bonds, friendships, institutions, or communities. Finally, as population centers shift and patterns of affiliation evolve, thinking about engagement alongside the concept of empowerment might be really fruitful. Empowerment asks whether people and communities have the tools, resources, skills, and knowledge they need to pursue the lives that they hope to craft. And that might be a way into a deeper understanding of Jewish engagement. Today's episode was hosted by me, Frayda Gonshor Cohen. Thank you to Annie Jollymore and Josh Miller for participating in the episode. Sparklines is a podcast from Rosov Consulting. Our mission is to provide high-quality research, evaluation, and insights to Jewish organizations, enabling them to make informed decisions and to effectively pursue their strategic goals. Today's episode was produced and edited by Brian Blumenband, along with Ariel Nissenblatt and David Woji from Audley. It was mixed by David Woji. Our artwork is by Karen Uribe. If you found this episode useful, share it with a colleague and start a conversation about Jewish engagement. Check out our show notes for links to the research referenced in this episode. This is the final episode of Sparklines for now. Thank you for listening, and make sure to go back and check out our previous episodes if you haven't heard them yet.